Hey, this is Melissa McClelland.
And I'm Luke Doucet.
And we are the band Whitehorse.
And you are watching/listening to
AMBY.
Hey everyone, it's Alicia from AMBY, and I'd like to welcome you to our interview with Whitehorse. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you both doing?
We're good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for chatting with us today.
Of course.
Our pleasure.
So we're here at CBC Music Festival in Toronto. It's a beautiful day. Can you just walk us through your last 24 hours? What have you both been up to?
I went on my first bicycle ride, like real bicycle ride yesterday, and I actually managed to go. We started up in the Junction Triangle, and I ended up all the way down along the lake, and then up the Humber, all the way up to Sunnybrook. Or sorry, not the Humber, what's that called? The Don Valley, the Don River.
Yeah.
Through the Don River Valley and up to Sunnybrook, and it was quite beautiful, really amazing, beautiful day.
And I took my granny bike and with the baby seat on the back, and I put our 2-year-old son in the seat, and we rode our bikes to High Park, and we hung out there for a while. It was absolutely beautiful. It was so gorgeous.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to kick things off by really saying congrats on the release of the Northern South Volume 1 EP.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
When you put this whole thing together, what were some of the highlights you had?
Well, it was 5 days in the studio and 6 songs, I believe.
Yeah.
So, we didn't have much time to really obsess over it, which is actually a good thing. It was a good way to approach it. We spent some time really thinking about the songs that we wanted to choose. We dug back into early blues, and we took some old classics and did some fun experimental stuff with them. So it was kind of like a fly by the seat of our pants in the studio.
In a lot of ways, the songs kind of revealed themselves. The production revealed itself partly as we were going, but also when we got mixes back from our engineer Steven. We recorded the songs kind of off the floor, not live exactly, because the way we record is I'll play a bunch of drums, and then Melissa will play some bass, and then we'll just add things, sort of pile on different tracks, and then we'd step away from it, and then the next day, we would get an email with a rough mix and be able to hear what we'd actually done, because it's hard to when you don't know the songs. These aren't songs that we had played before, so we kind of just put them together in the studio. So it was really, in a very short space of time, in 6 days, all of a sudden we went from never having played these songs to having what was essentially
mastering them.
That finished record. And that was when you write songs and record them, you spend months writing and editing and showing each other stuff and talking about it and then choosing songs, and it's a fairly laborious process. But because these were covers, a week before we had a finished record, these songs were almost foreign to us in some ways.
You covered everybody from Robert Johnson to Coco Taylor on this EP, and the thing I really enjoy about your music is always how it has a bunch of different nuances. You can feel a bunch of different genres in it. So why did you decide to tackle the blues genre, like do an entire EP full of blues covers?
Well, we knew that a lot of our songs are definitely influenced by old American classics, so whether it be folk or country or blues, rock and roll, all that stuff seeps into what we do as Whitehorse. So the idea of the Northern South Volume 1, which means there will be a Volume 2, Volume 3, we wanted to, pay tribute to some of those artists, some of those songs that have really kind of characterized what we do as Whitehorse. So we were delving into all of those genres, and at some point we just realized, that there's something really for a lot of reasons. We could go into many corners of why we chose blues. Luke has a very rich history with playing blues. He's been playing it since he was a teenager. But with Whitehorse and our setup with making loops and using electronics and technology, we found that the blues format really offered us a lot of freedom. And so we could really take those songs and play with them a lot and really make them our own. So to us, that seemed like a fun project. Yeah.
There's also a thing about winding the clock back as far as we could go before you lose the essence of rock and roll. And I think when you people like Little Walter and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all the crowd of Delta blues artists from Mississippi and Louisiana, when they made their way up to Chicago, all of a sudden they started playing with drummers and piano players and bass players together, and like the band, essentially the small band, essentially rock and roll bands, were born in that era, and there's something about that era and the sound of the instruments and the sound of the interplay, the sound of humans listening to one another, that's always appealed to us. And we've done covers by lots of artists in the past who have all sort of mined the depths of that period, and it's sort of in stark juxtaposition to what we do as Whitehorse, because we make loops. There's a lot of technology involved, and yet we're trying to find a way to use the technology, but also to pay tribute and emulate the sound of musicians getting into a room together and trying to figure out what happens when you have to work together. And that's, in 1953 in the bars in the south side of Chicago, that's what those musicians were doing, which is why the blues is otherwise, people will define it as 12 bars. In our case, in the case of Sonny Boy Williamson in the early 50s, it wasn't so much 12 bars. It might be 13 this time, and then 15 the next time, and then maybe there's 12. And then at some point, after a year or two, they all sat down and went, hey guys, maybe we should stick to 12. Maybe that would be, then we'd know what's going on. And there's that period right in there when they were just trying to figure that out, that there was a real sweet spot in the development of rock and roll, and we've always loved that. So that, I don't know that there's never been another time in the history of rock and roll when and of course rock and roll hadn't even really been invented yet technically, but there was never a period in the history of rock and roll when it was so innocent and so exciting and so organic.
You actually use instruments from that era on this new EP, so did you have to go and look for those vintage instruments, or did you have some of them already?
We kind of have a lot of that. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, we collect old rickety instruments, and,
They sound good.
They really do. Luke plays this Stella guitar. It's made of plywood, and it's worth nothing. It's a cheap guitar, and it has a cheap pickup, and it sounds like magic. Like, it obviously, when it's in this guy's hands, it sounds like magic. But it definitely, that instrument has some mojo. Like, it is a beautiful sounding instrument, and I think that fits right into exactly what you were talking about, that magical time where it wasn't about fancy instruments and slick playing and super glossy finish. It was about the flaws and fighting with your instrument, and that's what made it so real and so inspiring.
And of course, that was just the reality of what people had to deal with. And when we're talking about blues artists, they weren't rich rock stars. They didn't have access to really expensive instruments. They had access to what they could get their hands on. They could make music on it. So it's true what Melissa says about the instruments, where there was a certain fight in the sound of what it means to play those instruments. But also at the same time, in those, everybody, it's not like people deliberately tried to find things that were hard to play in the early 1950s. It's just that was the reality of their lives. Now we have access to all kinds of technology and instruments that could be as easy to play as we like, but the fight is an important fight. When you have your hands on something and it's fighting back a little bit, I feel like that's a good sound. There's a certain sound that comes out of that fight that I think is essential.
You had mentioned before how there's a volume 2, possibly a volume 3 in the works. Are those both going to be blues focused as well?
You know what? I think we'll make those decisions when when we approach those records. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of these EPs is to, do something between our studio records that's, out of the ordinary or fun for us, or just kind of a side project that we can really choose what we're feeling in that moment. So who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not sure if people can hear in the background. I can hear Tanya Tagak show behind us. And that's probably the one thing we won't attempt.
Although we will probably collaborate with her.
We would love to collaborate with her.
We've been talking about it for years now. Yeah.
It's not that we wouldn't allow those sounds to be a part of our music. Absolutely, we'd be honored. We're just not going to do that.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I'm going to try now. Are you ready? Ready? Here goes.
No. Come on, you can't do that.
I can.
Well, when you aren't focusing on the music aspects of your lives, what do you do when you have downtime?
We make EPs.
We actually vacation apart half the time.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time together on the road and in the studio and at home, and So, you know, we find these little pockets of time to go off and do things on our own. I run a charity with two musician friends of mine. We co-founded it. It's called Ladybird Animal Sanctuary, and we rescue domestic animals from high-kill shelters in the southern Ontario area. So that takes up a lot of my time, and it's really gratifying, and I get to work with my best friends. And
it's not uncommon for Melissa and the Ladybirds to go somewhere fun, you know, maybe Arizona, maybe even to an animal sanctuary in upstate New York a couple times, or in Florida. And they'll go do that, and it's a combination of work and party, and well, I guess it's not work; it's charitable work. Yeah, it's work.
Yeah.
And I often go to Winnipeg and hang out with my family, like my mom and my brothers and sisters, and bring Jimmy or
Yeah. We find stuff. We find fun stuff to do.
Yeah.
Let's wrap everything up today. Is there anything you want to say to all of your fans who will be viewing our interview?
Hi.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
And thanks to both of you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And remember, to everybody viewing, you can visit us at musicblogya.com for all exclusive interviews, features, videos, and so much more with your favorite bands. See you next time.